Hi, this is G. Ramirez. Now, in audio production, maximization is the process of increasing the overall loudness of a track or a mix without exceeding a specific level. Typically, it's like 0 dB FS, decibels full scale. This technique is commonly used during mastering to make a track sound as loud as possible and avoiding distortion or clipping. But maximization can also be applied within the mix itself to enhance what we call the perceived loudness. This involves making quieter elements of the mix louder while keeping the peak level at 0 dB FS. This is a key technique used by top mixers to create rich, impactful tracks that sound louder than others, even when the peak levels are absolutely identical. Now, in dance music, achieving competitive loudness is essential. While streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple and Tidal normalize tracks to -14 LUFS, it's still critical to ensure the content within your track is as loud and impactful as possible while retaining some degree of dynamic range. These methods can help you elevate the perceived loudness of your tracks, allowing them to hold their own alongside the loudest releases in the industry. All right, let's get fattening. Okay, we're back over in Ableton Live, and we're going to be using the same tracks we used for the glitchy beats demonstration. I'm just going to give you a quick reminder of how it sounds. The idea is to sort of try and squeeze as much out of this as we possibly can using these techniques. This is how it sounds. So, let's get to our first technique. I'm going to go over here to the drum group. Now, I've grouped my drums. The drums are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quite a simple drum group there. I'm going to solo it. The first technique is parallel compression, otherwise known as New York compression. Now, let me sort of talk about compression itself, just in case you are a little bit confused by what this is. So if I'm going to draw you a little diagram here. So compression, what it does, say for instance, on a groove like this, we've got the loud sounds, which is generally the kick, like that. Okay, so what it does, compression, to some extent, brings down the level of the loud sounds. And what that enables you to do, bring up the level of the quiet sounds, reducing the dynamic range. Okay. However, it has an adverse effect. This amount of compression can mess with the transients, it can mess with the groove of the track, and it can make things sound a little bit messy. But we can utilize it in a parallel way. Now, what is a parallel? Parallel compression means you have two signals. This is the dry signal running through like this, okay? And then this is the comp signal. Now, the comp signal is just going to be mixed in underneath the dry signal very quietly, okay? So what it does, it sort of fattens the dry signal. It doesn't mess with the dynamics of the dry signal. They are left untouched, okay? So, look, here we've got the parallel compression chain. I've got the dry signal there. Look, no plugins on it. On the parallel chain, I've got the compressor and an EQ. So let's just solo I'm going to bring this up in volume as well. So take the EQ off. What we're going to do here is set the attack really fast so it catches it as quick as possible. Now, it doesn't catch it instantly, but it's quick as possible. And the release is fast, but not fastest. Okay, so what we've got now, and then we're going to set the threshold. So we've got a lot of compression going on. Sounds pretty awful on its own. And the next thing we want to do as well is you don't always have to do this, but I remove some of the low end. I don't want the low end to get any bigger. I just want to keep that the same. And I also don't want those super highs in there either. I'm sort of concentrating mainly on that mid-range section there. Okay, and then what I do is I simply turn this down and mix it in. Mix it into the dry signal without. Okay, so without, with. Take a look at the level. Again, without. 4.1, with. Not that much louder, even though it sounds quite a lot louder, it's only probably like 1 or 2 dBs. Parallel compression is a great tool for bringing out those quieter signals. Now, I found this plugin. This has just come out. It's a new one by a company called Music Hack. Music Hack make a plugin called Master Plan, which is sort of a one-stop plugin for mastering, and they've imported quite a lot of the algorithms from that, including the limiter and the clipper. But it's got some extra bits in here. The thick, I think, is a sort of upward expander. Upward expander is completely the opposite to a downward compressor, which we've just been looking at. Upward expander takes the quiet sounds and brings them up. Downward compressor takes the loud sounds and brings them down. Okay, so what does that do? Have the effect of bringing up quiet sounds in the mix. All right, you got compression, we got clipping, we got loudness, and you can see, look, very subtle effects I've got there with. Subtle, I know. Let's do it extreme. Great plugin. I use it a lot. So the next thing we want to look at is the bass. Now, the bass, how do I get that fatter? Well, I'm going to go straight to my saturator that I use a lot, called the Decapitator. Decapitator is a model, it models the Culture Vulture, which is sat there in that rack. I'm going to just drop this onto here. So the Decapitator. Now, let's listen to this in solo so we can hear what's going on. Let me just drive it. You'll notice straight away that there's a problem. The problem is that as I drive it, it's distorting. Now, for those of you that know, Decapitator works in an analog fashion, and it requires an input of -18 because it's a non-linear process, meaning it's, the louder signal you feed into it, the more it works, the higher it's been calibrated to a -18 level for it to sort of not distort when you go in. So to get around that, if I erase this, I've set up this rack. This rack here has an input, a utility. I turn it down by -18, going into Decapitator, and then back up again via +18 to sort of even the level out. So we put that on. And that enables us then to mess with the Decapitator drive without it having. So it works as it's supposed to. Without. Notice how much louder it sounds, and it's at the same level. If we look at this level over here, how does that work? Well, it kind of works in this fashion. You say, for instance, you have this is very crude, by the way, excuse me, but hopefully it gets the point across. We have a sort of, say, for instance, you have a waveform that looks like that. All right, that might be a kick drum. What it does is saturation adds in these extra harmonics like this. Okay, so these harmonics can be even harmonics or odd harmonics. So what you get is you get the same level, but it's actually filling in this gap here with harmonics. So it's making it sound louder, even though it's not. Decapitator, of course, means chop off the head. So it can actually take away some of the peaks as well, while adding these extra harmonics, just making a fatter, fuller sound. So saturation is your sort of go-to tool to get maximization within any kind of track. All right, so getting somewhere. Now, the next thing we want to look at, these are just a few of the techniques, remember there's hundreds of them, is this one. I'm going to put on the master chain, I'm going to put Saturn. What I've done is I've set it into two bands here. I've got the low band here, which is up to about, in this instance, up to about 260 hertz. And I'm just going to drive the low band and leave the top band alone. This is fine. I've got this fattening going on in the mix for the top end. I want to get some warmth and some juice in the bottom end, right? So we can just do that. Let's take a listen to it. It's in solo. About there, don't want it to distort, of course, like there. Bring that in, without, with. Just adds a little bit of fatness to the bottom end. You don't want it in the top end. The top end is already enough. That kind of messes with those dynamics too much. You don't want to do that. And then onto this next plugin, which is the OG. I've had this plugin for, it's got to be 15 years, probably longer. Amazing, considering that it's one of the original sort of plugins from back in the day, that it's still so relevant and it's still so good. And the reason being is because it kind of works in a few ways. It incorporates all of those things we were talking about, upward expansion, kind of harmonics. It adds harmonics into there. It also brings in some clipping. It's got a clipping piece as well, and we can simply use it. The effect is, I think, the sort of upward expansion. So let's bring that in. clearly too much. Let's have a look at 30%. Off. Quite a profound change there, isn't it? And then the clipper is rather nice on this. It's a soft clipper, not a hard clipper. So we can push that until we start to see the red going. Now that's on the edge of distortion, of course. I can't really hear it because the monitors have to be so low. Okay, so those two make a profound difference. Okay, so as I said, those are just a few of the techniques I like to use. Now this subject is very close to my heart, volume and loudness. So if you have any techniques or any plugins that you want to recommend to me, please do. I'd really love to keep this conversation going because let's all learn from this together.